What if I were to tell you that government agencies are gradually being weaponized against you? Yes, we discussed the DOJ and the FBI being used as weapons against Trump in our previous segments, but that's how it begins. You take out the political faction leader. Then once the leader is gone, you make your way through the faction strongholds until there is no one left because they are either in prison or are so afraid of prosecution that they have assimilated into the authoritarian ideology that has suppressed them. Now, if you're thinking that this can't possibly be true and that this is just conspiratorial thought coming from a right-wing nutjob, you are probably correct. But it is also possible that you are already part of the machine, which makes it difficult for you to understand the warning signs around you because you have been taught to ignore them. You are part of a herd of sleeping sheep who are unaware of the wolf lurking in the shadows. With that being said, this brings us to our last segment of the day, a segment called The Unexplained.
You are traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound but of mind, a journey into a wondrous land where its boundaries are that of imagination. That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, The Unexplained.
So this is a segment in which we will discuss strange occurrences, whether it news, conspiracy theories, a video of an object in the sky, a newly discovered cryptid, or true crime. With the new bill passed called the Inflation Reduction Act, another government agency has been expanded in preparation for a potential move to weaponize the IRS against the American people. This is not the first instance of a government body being expanded and weaponized. You can call it a conspiracy theory all you want, but there are numerous examples of the deep state, also known as the bureaucratic state, spying on you, gathering information, finding ways to tax and track you, and even going so far as to pass legislation to create a registry of every American who owns a firearm. I wouldn't be surprised if they are also compiling a DNA registry in secret. The CIA, EPA, FTC, NSA, FBI, and the ATF, anyone you name that has a nefarious background is slowly increasing their budget. And according to Forbes, the Schumer-Manchin tax bill, known as the Inflation Reduction Act, which passed the Senate on Sunday, raises taxes and will give the IRS billions to go into what the Wall Street Journal called beast mode. In all, the meant-to-be inflation buster bill will dole out about $80 billion to the IRS for increased enforcement, operational improvement, customer service, and system modernization. Think big, really big. That $80 billion is more than 6 times the current annual IRS budget of $12.6 billion. How can the IRS spend all of that? You guessed it. The bill says a whopping $45.6 billion will be for enforcement, and make no mistake, enforcement is the main directive from the Democrats to the IRS. Get bigger, tougher, and faster at collecting and make them pay. Jesus. I like this writer. But let me ask this question here. How does giving the IRS $80 billion in annual revenue fix inflation? So, and another question, how are they going to force collection? Now, and maybe this article from Verify will explain. Yes, the Internal Revenue Service did buy nearly $70,000 in ammunition in early 2022. What? Verify viewer Ian asked if the IRS bought $700,000 in ammunition earlier this year. It's true. It's for armed agents who can carry weapons and ammunition. Let's scroll down here. Between March 1st and June 1st, 2002, the Criminal Division of the IRS ordered $696,000 in ammunition, the IRS told Verify in an email. The order was for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, which is a federal law enforcement agency that conducts criminal investigation including tax violation, money laundering, cybercrimes, and organized crime involving drugs and gangs. There are more than 2,000 sworn special agents in this division. Well, that 2,000 is about to get bigger. The IRS is going to show up at the door like jackbooted thugs, shaking you down for that $50 you forgot to claim on your taxes while issuing you a $1,000 penalty. Jesus. Now, you might be saying, quit it. That faction of the IRS is for criminals. They would never be used to come after law-abiding American citizens or organize against political opponents. Well, you tell that to George Regis and the Tea Party. Reason writes, just shy of a decade ago, a retired rector named George Regis stepped into the pulpit at All Saints Episcopal Church in Pasadena, California, a few days before the November election, and let fly with some good old-fashioned fire and brimstone. The targets of his passion, President George W. Bush and the war in Iraq, also conservative politicians, not to mention the religious right. Okay. Regis described war as the most extreme form of terrorism. Speaking in the voice of Jesus Christ, he said, "The killing of innocent people to achieve some desired goal is morally repudiated by anyone claiming to follow me as their savior and guide." He went on to condemn poverty, defend abortion rights, and so on. What happened next will surprise you only if you just fell off a turnip truck. The IRS came knocking. It threatened the church's tax-exempt status, demanded all kinds of paperwork, and carried on an investigation that lasted more than 2 years and cost the church $200,000. Jesus. And then Reuters writes, Justice Department settles with conservative groups over IRS scrutiny. The U.S. Justice Department has reached a settlement with dozens of conservative groups that claim the Internal Revenue Service unfairly scrutinized them based on their political leanings when they sought a tax-exempt status, court documents showed. In a pair of lawsuits filed in court in 2013, the conservative groups accused the IRS of targeting organizations with such words as Tea Party and Patriots when they applied to the agency for tax-exempt status starting in 2010. The side asked the United States District Court for the District of Columbia on Wednesday to issue a declarative judgment on one of those cases involving 41 plaintiffs that would say the IRS was wrong to apply the United States tax laws based on the entity's name, position, or association with a particular political movement. Jesus, sorry guys. We hope that today's settlement makes clear that the abuse of power will not be tolerated, Attorney General Jeff Sessions said in a statement on Thursday. The IRS admitted it was wrong when it based screenings of the group's application on their names or policy positions, subjected the groups to higher scrutiny and delays, and demanded unnecessary information from the groups, the arrangement in the Washington case said. So, like I said earlier, you can call the weaponization of governmental bodies a conspiracy theory all you want, but there is tons of evidence that proves otherwise. Like the ATF, who raided a religious compound in Waco, Texas because they were stockpiling weapons. It is not against the law to stockpile weapons. It is our Second Amendment right to do so. The ATF said the weapons were illegal, but there is no evidence to prove that. 76 people died because the ATF used military tactics to raid law-abiding citizens. Now, I'm not saying David Koresh wasn't doing anything illegal. I'm sure there was some form of sexual abuse going on there, but that is something for local law enforcement to deal with, not the ATF. In 2003, the FBI attempted to radicalize a 21-year-old Muslim male by having an FBI informant groom him with anti-American propaganda and then assisted the 21-year-old in planning a bombing at the New York Herald Square subway station. The 21-year-old got cold feet and left, telling the FBI informant that he could not carry out the plan. 4 days later, the FBI and the New York Police Department surrounded him at gunpoint, arrested him, and charged him with terrorism. He was convicted of a crime he did not commit, a crime he only discussed committing, a crime planted in his mind by an FBI informant. He received a 30-year federal prison sentence. And that was not the first time we heard about the FBI radicalizing American citizens, nor was it the last. They've done it several times since 2003. The most recent being Grand Rapids, Michigan, where the FBI manipulated and convinced 4 men to try and kidnap Governor Whitmer. They were cleared of all charges. The NSA was spying on American people. They forced Verizon and an AT&T to turn over all of their call records for 3 months in order to obtain metadata. They could use this information to determine when you called someone, how long you talked to that person, who that person was, and the location of both you and the person on the other end of the line. They also created a data mining program called Prism that could acquire your emails, chat logs, and browsing history all from your IP address that was connected to whatever server you use, which means Google, Facebook, Chrome, Yahoo, etc. If that sounds familiar, that is because Edward Snowden leaked that information to the American people after finding out himself while working for the CIA. The DEA is the epitome of governmental agencies that is weaponized against the American people. Now, I hate the race baiting used by journalists when discussing this issue. The people statistically incarcerated by the DEA are predominantly Hispanic and Black, but I think the big reason for that is white Americans can afford, more often than not, a good attorney. The war on drugs has been a contributing leader to the mass incarceration of American people. The war on drugs was coined in 1971, and the spearhead of this coalition was the DEA that was created in 1973. The DEA has been the single most significant contributor to the industrial prison complex. They have assisted in the overcrowding of prisons while engaging in illegal operations and violating civil rights laws, all while having no effect on the drug supply in the United States. In 2019, over 20,000 people were convicted of federal drug offenses, the majority of those sentences including lengthy prison terms. Those convicted of marijuana trafficking received an average of 31 months in federal prison. The average sentence for methamphetamine trafficking is nearly 8 years. Half of those federal prisons are serving sentences for drug crimes. So I'm not saying these people don't need to be in jail. They do. But I think there's a different way to go about this instead of giving somebody 8 to 10 years for trafficking drugs. It's not helping keeping drugs off the streets at all. Fuck the DEA, man. They haven't done shit for us. The DEA has also halted research into the medical benefits of certain drugs, ensuring their classification remains unchanged. According to drugpolicy.org, the DEA secretly and without explicit authority tracked billions of international phone calls made by U.S. residents for decades. The Justice Department Inspector General in 2019 raised numerous concerns about the DEA's suspicious surveillance of American phone records. On top of that, if they couldn't get authorization of wiretaps from federal courts, they would go around them and seek authorization from local courts. The DEA agents reportedly received money, gifts, and weapons from Colombian drug trade organizations. This included participating in parties with sex workers hired by these organizations. Most concerning is the DEA officials were not fully compliant with the Inspector General's investigation of the allegations. Dirty, dude. There's more, but I think I made my points. So, if you still think weaponization of governmental agencies against American citizens is a conspiracy theory after this segment, then you are naive and you deserve the ass ramming the IRS is going to bring you with their shiny new pistols. And this was the Unexplained.
You are traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land where its boundaries are that of imagination. That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Unexplained.